Hello everyone. This was originally gonna be a full-on retrospective on the entire history of LoL, but I feel like that would be way too much work. Instead, I do want to talk about something I've developed and hope it becomes official embraced knowledge of the community going forward. These eras are not officially defined and were decided by me with the help of some other LoL community members. What is important is that I will be using these eras for some future video ideas and maybe inspire others as well. Classic era is the beginning of LoL as a whole, and it is also the longest era by far. For most of Classic era, Jhin was the only gun in town, and the thought of other spin-offs was unthinkable. Jhin's LoL was popular though, and it was mainly known during these early days for its memetic inclusions and the LoL subspace emissary. Everything would change with Heavy's moveset, created by Ancient Rock Luxury, which debuted in the first day of August. This became the first official LoL spin-off, and in April 2012 we got YTB Kai's spin-off and SpongeBob. Back in those days, spin-offs didn't really have names of their own. They were mostly named after the people who created them. Hell, the term LoL itself was mostly a niche term that Jhin only made sneaky references to. And it wasn't until 2012 that Jhin renamed every moveset to include the word LoL in it. And speaking of Jhin, copying Jhin was everyone's bread and butter. All of them were based on Brawl because Smash Bros 4 for Wii U and 3DS wasn't out yet. There were no unique standout designs or layouts. If Jhin made a stage video, it was obligated for someone else to do one as well. And this continued into the second half of Classic era, with the debuts of LoL Meta and LoL Nova, created by Curbstar and Scapocon respectively. The first LoL to not copy everything from Smash was Throw Some LoL back at them, which tried to go for its own aesthetic with mixed results. However, much like every other LoL on this list, it used to go by the name of just Smash Bros Lawl. I remember that because I literally did it. However, any LoL that wasn't Jhin was not liked at all. Most people thought they were dumb and terrible and plagiaristic, and yeah, there were some LoLs not on the tier list that were actually terrible. Most notoriously, LoL Ultimate. Everyone knows what LoL Ultimate is, and most of the time this was people's default assumption what LoL spin-off was like.
Holy shit, I'm in a game!
Even Jhin himself commented on this in a tweet where he said something like, "Most people refer to my LoL as Jhin's LoL. It seems that this thing has gotten bigger than me." And the replies were like, "All those spin-off rosters are messy and unorganized. Yours is actually thematically consistent." However, Jhin did consider Cosmo from YTB Kai's LoL and Spy from LoL ARL as his favorite movesets not made by him at the time. The hatred people had towards spin-offs may have been the reason why many spin-offs ended up coming up with their own names and subtitles, with the only LoL that didn't do it being YTB Kai's LoL. The hateful sentiment was dying anyways by the time LoL Meta and LoL Nova became mainstay LoLs. In terms of moveset quality, a lot of classic era LoL stuff could be marked with big product of its timestamp, and some can be marked with very product of its timestamp as well. When people talk about these sets, it's mostly out of nostalgia and kind of look back on the era where balancing and competitive stuff wasn't that big of a deal. There is a distinct charm to this era, and even something like YTB Kai's LoL, which never ended up giving personalized stages to any of its fighters, eventually got its own identity. That being said, not everything exactly was copied one-on-one from Chincherinas. YTB Kai, for instance, is responsible for creating the empty slot, a tradition which has community suggest characters for the lore to do, and the lorer selects the characters they want to do the most. Or in YTB Kai's case, all the characters that were suggested. This is most famous with the case of Empty Slot 3. It should also be noted that the first ever Empty Slot winner was actually rigged. That story might get its own video. So, how did the classic era end? Well, a lot of eras ending are often associated with one thing.
Death!
Yes, by the time next era rolled around, LOL ARL, LOL Whitey Big Eye and LOL Meta had been cancelled or were on its way to cancellation. The only LOLs that chugged along to the next era were LOL Nova and threw some LOL back at them, which is rather prophetic. There was also another big factor, that being Jin not only being busier with Frollo show, but also putting out a moveset that pretty much started a domino effect that would carry into later eras.
Let me introduce myself. I'm a public menace.
Standstill era began with J. Jonah Jameson, and this moveset marked the death of not only the classic era, but also the classic way Jin edited his videos. Weird Al was the first set to be in widescreen, but still had the classic memetic style of Jin's classic era material. Here the video editing is kind of a combination of his modern style and the more traditional editing style. Also the moveset is so far removed from any sort of actual playability, it is more of a skit than an actual moveset with thought put behind it. J. Jonah Jameson has a boss playstyle, a completely unique playstyle that alters the way character is forced to play against them in a specific way. While a good idea in a concept, the execution leaves more than a whole another video's worth to be desired. Not to mention J. Jonah Jameson's moveset was also set to right of Snake, since Jameson got his own codex, but then Jin got the bright idea to turn Snake's codex into a character of their own, Codex Snake. And yeah, this was a decision, and thus the Standstill era began. This era of YouTube also set a rise of cringe culture, and as such some LOLs, especially LOLs run by children, became victims of it. As a result, nobody really wanted to do their own LOL, aside from kids, and kids realized that instead of running a proper LOL, they could just make text LOLs, thus eliminating the need to do nasty things like editing or making sprites, or doing anything period. Text LOLs consisted of nothing but text and picture of source material, and I remember Super ARC Bros Lawl being pretty guilty of this back in the day. But that LOL nowadays is lost media. But I was really annoyed that it kept coming up anytime I looked up new LOL movesets. There also were many LOLs that only were put in some crappy LOL wiki or a certain website Jin used to run that no longer exists. This was also the era when LOL X was one of the top LOLs. Yeah, Standstill era was not good time to be into LOL. And 2015 is the era with the least amount of moveset in all time in LOL history since the spinoffs first became commonplace. Codex Snake also came out during that time, and it was more of a skit, rather than a moveset, even more so than Jameson's. And Jin was more busy with Frollo show, which was becoming more and more gory and mindfucky with every episode, and didn't have as much time putting out movesets like in the classic era. That being said, he did put out Frollo vs Nostalgia Critic, which may be the most over-referenced LOL video of all time, but for a good reason. It's also one of the few times Jin changed things about his movesets. The vices of Standstill era eventually led to Scapocon making her own series to satirize those weaker LOLs, known as Lal Nova. Lal Nova would become an April Fool's tradition for the next few years, and yeah, if you want a time capsule of what the biggest cliches of the LOLs made during that era were like, look no further than Plus Pichu. Guidance Bit was made next year to satirize Codex Snake, which probably marks the first time a LOLer specifically critiqued Jin for something. That being said, there were some solid attempts at LOLs, but all of these were left as one and done attempts, such as Captain Comic, Gabe Newell, Mario Head, and The Real Doom. There were also some rumors of a LoL game being worked on, with only hints of it being a small test moveset video for a red stick figure, the first ever original character to receive a set. LoL Nitro was also there. The latter half of Standstill era, however, did start to show some light as well. We saw the debut of LoL Mad, an absolutely fantastic spin-off which is still ongoing, and in early 2016, Throw Some LoL Back at Them came back. While a lot of sets from that day haven't aged well, they certainly age a lot better than sets from another LoL that debuted during that time, LoL Liquid Crystal. If you have seen Heblay's videos talking about the moveset on those LoLs, you know those sets may genuinely be some of the worst material ever put on the tier list. So while Standstill era ended with light at the end of the tunnel, it was not free from crap. And LoL Liquid Crystal, at its worst, is still better than certain spin-off which won't be named, but it rhymes with all on the bread. Some other things that were patented during its Standstill era was that many of the ongoing LoLs began to have more of their own identity. Throw Some LoL Back at Them in particular was the first LoL with actual connected narratives before and after movesets, better known nowadays as LoL lore. Since LoL's lore was mainly relegated to Subspace Emissary, and most of the intros and outros in LoL were just wacky skits and character interactions. Before we get to the next era, there was another moveset from that era that marks a change in community's attitude. Perry the Platypus from LoL Nova. Scapocon talks that she wanted to make a more balanced competitive moveset that would work like a real moveset in Smash would. Perry has since received some balance patches, but looking back, that set had more thought of actual playability put into it than most sets made during the Standstill era, and that works as the perfect foreshadowing of the massive changes that would happen as we reach the most influential era. By late 2016, things were already started to feel different. We had the debut of LoL Beatdown by Shadbad, which showed a ton of potential, and next month LoL What If by That CCP debuted. And then in early 2017 came arguably the best edited debut moveset for a LoL ever at that time, Yushimatsu and Elni. But what's even more important is that barely half a year had gone by and already the amount of movesets put out had surpassed the Standstill era. LoL Beatdown and LoL What If had consistently put out new movesets, and Throw Some LoL Back at Them was working on something that had never been done before or since. A massive part WWE's Royal Rumble, part Frollo gets flashed by a gothic word I am not gonna say, inspired battle royale called the Loyal Family. It was already during this 6-month period the standards of the community started to rapidly change. There was a lot more care and thought put into actual balance and competitive viability of characters, and the biggest law to drive this by far was What If. What If even created a new segment that has almost become a universal for all the LoL scenes to have in their sets, playstyle origins. Caddy Carus was the first to receive this segment, and since then, slowly but surely, every other LoL spin-off started introducing them with few exceptions. And it was at that point a lot of the community went, you know, a lot of the movesets in the previous eras were really shit. Which led to Scapocon creating another thing that since become a staple of the community, the update patch. The update patches were inspired by stuff I forgot to mention annotations that were used to address patches and new ideas to existing movesets without specifically making a video for them. These existed all the way back in Classic era and were used by YTB guys LoLs and later carried on to LoL Nova. However, update patches were their own dedicated video to better address issues in past videos, both because of better presentation and because YouTube had disabled annotations in early 2017. Update patch has since allowed to update various aspects of different movesets that didn't age well and balance them out. While it's not the first time existing moveset has had alterations done to them, it was a major change and didn't necessarily need LoLers to rebuild entire videos from ground up. While remakes did happen, such as Waluigi and Spitting Image Ronald Reagan remakes for throw some lol back at them, the update patches kept things concise and is arguably the best solution to updating an outdated or flawed moveset until YouTube introduces a feature that allows you to edit an existing video by uploading new segments to old videos. And maybe pigs could fly someday. Sorry if I sound bitter. Anyways, as you can see, the community standards were rising rapidly, and some lols that were updating way too frequently were left out of the changing tides, such as the lol Liquid Crystal, which tried to put out a new moveset every month. It's also when lol X started to go down in the ranks, and if you're wondering if that ever changed, answer me to this question. Is lol X on the ultimate tier list? Exactly. But to go back on the new spin-offs, we also saw the debuts of LOL Starstruck, LOL Galaxy, LOL Pix Academy, and most importantly, the proper debut of LOLdemic in the second half of 2017. LOLdemic is still to this day the best animated LOL and probably LOL who sets age better than anything else in the early golden era. The introduction of LOL game was another contributor to standard changing, as now people realize that they'd have to introduce ideas that they would have to actually be capable of programming into a real game. So things like custom stats and various Jameson-style gimmicks became a lot less popular. Gene-inspired elements like codex were also phased out, such as LOL What If ending Rick and Morty codex, and much later down the line we saw the end of Ready the Wizards codex from LOL Nova. LOL What If also helped to pave the way for new traditions that had nothing to do with community balancing. We had the first ever double movesets as well as April Fools becoming a LOL holiday. LOL Nova had ran for a few years now and seemingly inspired others to start making movesets on that date. These movesets, however, were not Irate Gamer or Best Hercules inspired joke movesets, but more abstract and unpredictable. They would often start as bait and switch for another character's moveset to suddenly change to another mystery character, and first in line was Small Nozomi. Instead of being a joke for the sake of a joke, Nozomi was still perfectly playable, but the set was fun, unexpected, and memorably chaotic. Over the years, April Fools has pretty much become the LOL holiday. It is now used for more than just joke movesets, and Scapocon would eventually retire LOL Nova with Steamhamp's classic mode, but still would keep making new kinds of wacky and unexpected April Fool videos for Nova. These days are more than just for movesets too, but there is one April Fools that is more significant than any other, but more on that later. We are only making it into 2018, which is when things really shook up. We had the debuts of LOL Zero, LOL Mayhem, LOL Soul, LOL Encore, and a Smash Bros Lawl thing, each with varying levels of longevity and success. One spin-off I haven't talked about that much about was LOL Beatdown, but if you know what LOL is, you know what LOL Beatdown is. LOL What If may have been a very influential spin-off, but LOL Beatdown is the only LOL that rivals Jin's LOL in terms of influence. LOL Beatdown took the concept of lore and made it even better, and just about any LOL with lore that has come out since has taken a page of Beatdown's playbook. Another influential aspect of Beatdown is the notoriety and consistent quality. Most of Beatdown's first moveset came out almost monthly because Shad worked on a lot of Beatdown assets before he even had the first moveset out. Eventually Beatdown's schedule would wind down, but it was a strong start and much more consistent quality-wise. Liquid Crystal, which arguably was at the rock bottom of its public reception, being compared to LOLs like LOL X and that one other LOL I want to mention. Beatdown especially gained popularity thanks to giving moveset to all members of the Edgeworth trio as well as Frisk from Undertale. However, with Edgeworth trio made, there was one question in people's minds. Where is Todd? Todd at the time may have been the most debated character in any LoL, to the point where is Todd became a community inside joke. But as soon as Todd was confirmed during a beatdown direct, with one of the most unique ways to reveal newcomers ever, the whole community went nuts. To this day, Todd's moveset is the most watched LoL moveset of all time, and as such, it is a cornerstone of the community and a headliner for LoL moveset Hall of Fame if there ever was one. It's also important in terms of lore because it introduces a major event in form of Todd breaking into the mansion that is frequently referenced in beatdown lore, as well as Dio contacting the villains from LoL 0, making it the first true cross-LoL interaction that was more serious, not in form of a quick gag or cameo. It was on that day the weird wacky world of the LoLverse was born. And it is with Todd that the early golden era of LoL comes to a close. As soon a familiar face would return from the ether. Remember when I mentioned that tweet Jin made where he talked about the LoL community becoming much bigger than the original LoL? That tweet he made during the classic era? Yeah, I feel like Jin was somehow able to see into the future, because by the time he returned, the community had passed him by. Jin's first moveset in years was Sheev Palpatine, a character who felt more like old movesets of Jin's era. It was definitely a lot more focused on skits and entertainment factor than competitive balancing, and it didn't even feature a playstyle origin. But a lot of people gave it a pass, because it was Jin. Still, when compared to the rest of the community, it was definitely a big contrast. This is arguably where the first cracks in the relationship between Jin Cherinas and the LoL community began to form. Still, Sheev was rather well received because it lacked the wacky gimmicks of J. Jonah Jameson and Codex Snake and was more straightforward and focused on providing entertaining visuals and great animation. Thus, we can still consider this another highlight of the Golden Era. Late Golden Era began with two major events: the debut of LoL Assault, which is still going on very strongly to this day, and also the end of the last spin-off established in Classic. Throw some LoL back at them. This event didn't really shake most of the community. Thistlebae's last moveset, Glow Cap Collapse visuals were a massive glow-up. There were way better spin-offs people liked a lot more. It was a loss to some, yes, but most people didn't know the full story. The truth is, I was the first person out of many to realize the standards of the community had gotten too high. Not only were the standards of competitive balancing higher than ever, so were the animation balances. Animation had to be consistent and high quality to a T. A first moveset can be forgiven for its hurdles, but you had LoL What If, LoL Demic and original LoL as trailblazers for high quality animation. As such, what some people wanted was animation that had to be on par with a real fighting game, or else it would feel more like a simulation of a fighting game. This, along with many other factors I don't want to talk about, made me bitter towards the LoL community. But when you remove my perspective, just about everything else in LoL community was better than ever. Heading from 2018 to 2019, we saw the debuts of LoL Sky Blue, LoL There's No Name, LoL Neon, Smash Bros, and most importantly, LoL Aureus and LoL Dreams. Both of these LoLs started with a whim but have since established themselves as extremely high quality spin-offs that are constantly fighting to be in the top 3 of ongoing spin-offs. Not only that, Shrekels would become one of LoL community's key figures later down the line, and popularity of Orios played a big part in that. During this time we also saw that Cheesy put out a moveset for Ed, Ed and Eddie in a monolith of a video that is to this day the longest LoL moveset of all time. However, what most people didn't know, that it would also be the last hurrah of LoL What If as a whole. Same with LoL Demic's moveset for triple question marks, Dark Side Fill, which became an interesting middle ground between a full-blown, unplayable Joe character of the old and quirky yet still a perfectly balanced character of the present. I personally dubbed them satire characters. Dark Side Fill paved the way for characters like Mrs. Mavilda and Connie, who are still playable but have enormous flaws for the lack of quality they provide. Worst Hercules of LoL Nova was also retooled to be like this in Nova's second update patch, while John DeMicco continues to be a more of a traditional Joe character because fuck him. Nobody still knew what the future of LoL Demic and LoL What If held, but other spin-offs were still riding smoothly. We also saw the debuts of LoL Redacted, LoL Hypercubed, LoL Transformed, and LoL Dimensions, and jeez, I had no idea that the last went that old. Late Golden Era is currently the era with largest amount of movesets due to 2 factors. One is due to sheer abundance of spin-offs, and second is that mirror fighters, originally known as alt clones, became more frequent. Concept of a mirror fighter actually precedes an echo fighter because Beeper was made way back in the early Golden Era, a month before Smash Ultimate was first teased. However, late Golden Era was when they became a lot more frequent, with Beatdown and LoL Nova making a whole video dedicated to them. Hell, LoL Nova made 2 videos, which is just insanely impressive. But as we get closer and closer to 2020, things kind of start to fall apart. Many spin-offs such as LoL Mayhem and LoL Starstruck were ultimately cancelled because of their inability to keep up with the rising standards. On top of that, Jin was nowhere to be seen as he was busy with Frollo Show, and the divisive nature of Frollo Show finale did not help matters. There also were some LoLs that were struggling behind the scenes, like LoL Zero, and it was in late 2019 that I suggested the unfathomable idea of merging LoL Zero with Trollsome LoL back at them. Earlier in 2019, we got the first and only LoL multi-direct, which released on Halloween, and I knew that the announcement of a merge, something that had never been done before, would be perfect for the second ever multi-direct. However, that multi-direct was cancelled, so yeah, the truth is, I was not that active in the community at the time, so I can't really speak for how people at the time felt. The only person who spoke publicly about the stressfulness of LoL community was me, and when I did that in my retrospective, it got a mixed reception. A lot of people either didn't want to admit it, or they were just used to it. Personally, if you ask me to point out a video that summarized problems of late Golden Era, I would point to a normal video, that is Slime Time Splatter SpongeBob moveset. When I first saw this moveset, I thought that this is where the community was going to eventually evolve. It was filled with competitive jargon and not enough explanation what each turn meant. This moveset has the opposite problem from Jin's later movesets. It is so indulged in the competitive bubble, it almost insults audience in its very existence. And yes, it was not a LoL video, but it was still made by a LoLer. Nowadays Gigi is better known for cartoons in Danganronpa, and the comment section praising the moveset was at the time filled with LoLers, so I felt that evolution into slime style was inevitable. And that mindset, combined with bad reception to my retrospective, was what made me want to help Anna. However, while Golden Era ended when COVID pandemic devastated the world, that doesn't mean the ending was dark. In fact, Golden Era was sent out with arguably the greatest April Fool's Day of all time, April Fool's 2020, which broke the world record for most LoL moveset released in one day. BIC from LoL Sky Blue, Eurotsuki with Susan and Hunt Cook from LoL Redacted, Bat Hero from LoL Zero, Uncle Samsonite from LoL Dreams, YTP Sexer and He Cooking from LoL Hypercube, Fred from LoL Transformed, and Clippy from LoL Assault. That's 9 movesets, 7 different wounds, all of them born during the Golden. Holy shit. LoL Nova also contributed to this with a full video for John Mirror Fighters. Well, while all of them non-canon were still full-blown movesets. Nothing of this scale could ever be imagined in the classic era. You just love to see how much community had fun. Unfortunately, community was soon about to do the opposite of growth. That's right, it's time for more
Death.
While it didn't happen all at once, it did take place slowly but surely during Transitional era. LoL What If, LoL Soul, and LoL Demic, and also the LoL game were all cancelled. The creators simply wanted to move on from LoL due to personal reasons. In a way, I feel that the cancellation of these 3 LoLs and LoL game is the closest that comes to an official standard collapse. The word collapse implies chaos and uncertainty, and I am not going to imply that the whole community was lying on the shoulders of these 3 spin-offs. We still had LoL Nova and LoL Beatdown and many other spin-offs, but it did make people realize just how harsh the community was during the Golden Era. Why this era is the Transitional era is not because these spin-offs got cancelled. Eras changing depend on several factors, and the first moveset of this era is one big factor on the transition. Enter LoL Odyssey, created by Zippity Zap. Zap here is a kind-hearted, passionate person who you may think came only around during this era, but you'd be wrong. There was one non-UTL LoL that came around during Standstill I did not talk about, and that is LoL DKS. LoL DKS was kind of a community punchline during the Golden Era, but there also were some who saw it as a genuine passion project. And in order to prove his worth to the community for reals, Zap wanted to rebrand and create a proper LoL spin-off, with his first moveset being Scott the Wars, a very popular YouTuber. Shortly after him we also got Tiff and Puff, Gary the Snail, Charmex, and Scratch and Grounder, going the beatdown route of providing a consistent introduction with a lot of decent movesets, with none of them feeling rushed. On Retrospective, LoL Odyssey or LoL Odyssey 4, as it's known nowadays, may have what saved the community from an actual standard collapse and a new Standstill era. I don't know what it is, but it did prove that you don't need to be a perfectionist and all wary of competitive knowledge to be good. It also caused the question of what LoL spin-offs could be considered worthy being part of the LoL canon, as there were many different opinions about it. This debate led to the birth of LoL Ultimate Tier List, which debuted in 2022. This is arguably the most important thing the LoL community has ever done, and Shreckles' finest creation that he still regularly updates to this day. And it's also the very thing I used to determine the eras alongside LoL moveset timeline, another useful bit Shreckles put together. But if it wasn't for Zippity Zap, Ultimate Tier List may have never been made, along with other positive changes community went through during the Transitional era. For that reason, Zap deserves the title of being the heart and soul of LoL community. Not only that, Shreckles was a big fan of LoL DKS, and to pay tribute to Zap, he created an actual moveset for DKS using the material featured in DKS' story mode and lore videos. And it was this moveset which eventually led to the biggest community collab in LoL history, but more on that later. DK's had went from a punchline into a legend, a title he deserves, alongside his creator. Transitional era was also a time of change. LoL Liquid Crystal was starting to slow down and going through a rebrand of sorts with a massive backlog of terrible moves it had that is still going on to this day. Throw some LoL back at them got uncancelled when it merged with LoL Zero, becoming Throw some LoL Z. LoL Odyssey also merged with LoL Hypercubed, becoming LoL Odyssey 4. These two are the only mergers that have happened, which does give this era a more unique flavor. However, one central theme during this era is more collaboration, with more LoLers starting to actively collaborate with one another other than just blending cameos. But on top of all LoL's changing, we also had new spin-offs debut, like Clal Overdrive, Nexus aka Hyper Edition, LoL Prime, LoL and Brawl, and LoL Nebula, and LoLers Mod, who would arguably gain more notoriety in the next era. Transitional era is admittedly a lot more quiet than both of the golden eras. Coincidentally, it is just as long as Standstill era and has more movesets, but it has been rather unfavorably compared to Standstill era, lack of activity compared to the last era. Well, for one, the world events that were happening during that time had a lot to do with that, and I myself was very much out of the community at that moment, and slowly but surely was planning to completely disassociate with it. With that being said, May of 2022 was when things started to buzz. First was the creation of Ultimate Tier List, which would quickly prove itself to be an extremely useful tool, and I've already talked about that. And second was Villain's Valley. Look, I will single-handedly argue that Villain's Valley is the worst video ever made with LoL in the title, and we'll leave it at that. The main point is, the cracks that appeared in Sheev's moveset got a lot bigger this time, and there were some genuine concerns if Jhin was losing his touch with the LoL community. This was more than confirmed with Grimoire Vase. Grimoire Vase has been argued to be the least viable OG LoL character, to the point it might actually be worse than J. Jonah Jameson and even Zoolander. Zoolander! It's not even classic material, it's Standstill era material. Grimoire Vase is the skit moveset to end all skit movesets. The whole character is essentially a codec character in an era where codecs were widely unpopular in LoL movesets. Being a codec was basically Vase's entire gimmick, leading to the moveset essentially being 5 minutes of talking. While it is not ethically and morally corrupt like Villain's Valley, and that's probably why most people were not angry with it, on retrospect it's hard to not look at it as the LoL equivalent of Milton Berle hosting Saturday Night Live. Sorry about the Anglo-centric reference. Era does have a happy ending, as in late 2022, something unthinkable happened. LoL Mad came back with Squidward, and just 1 month after it, people started realizing that waves of change were coming. Look, for all these previous eras, the reason eras had changed had multiple factors. Classic era transitions to Standstill era when J. Jonah Jameson changed the dynamic of Jhin's moveset, and the OG LoL was starting to take more of a backseat in general, along with various first spin-offs being cancelled. Standstill era transitions to Golden era with the introduction of LoL Beatdown and LoL What If, and all the changes to the community they brought in, along with the incoming hype of LoL game and general increase in video quality and competitiveness of movesets. Golden era transitions to Transitional era with the cancellation of several significant spin-offs and a shift towards a less perfectionist and more welcoming community. But Renaissance era happened because of the domino effect that the release of LoL Mad Squidward moveset brought in. The reason Thistle C came back from hiatus, Squidward. The reason Oreos Discord server blew up, Squidward. You could ask why anything happened in LoL community after 2022, and the reason would be Squidward. Okay, maybe we should not give all the credit to Squidward. December was also a surprisingly stacked month, with LoL Beatdown, LoL Oreos, and LoL Dreams all uploading well-received movesets. Mrs. Mavilda, Mario Pissin, and Flickby. Name a more iconic trio. I'll wait. 2023 is when things really took off. LoL Cross-Up debuted and it became the first ever LoL spin-off to get into the ultimate tier list instantly. Nowadays most quality LoLs get in immediately, but back then there were a set of rules to decide what gets into the tier list. Most importantly, you had to have 3 sets out. Cross-Up got in with 1, and I would argue ditching this rule made ultimate tier list even more important and prestigious. Cross-Up wasn't the only spin-off to debut. During this time, we also got LoL Immortal, LoL Jupiter, and LoL Infection, which exists. El Neo, which entered hiatus during late Golden Era and was commonly mistook for being cancelled, also was rebooted as Super Crack Force, making it the first LoL spin-off to not have LoL in the title. 2023 was also the year of very ambitious projects. This was the year the public first learned of DK's movie 2, Escape to Lolcatraz, which featured work from almost everyone in the community, including me, before I even knew the whole movie existed. And also, since Throw Some LoL Back at Them was turning 10 years old, it was celebrated with a long anniversary special. I can't believe that project took me 5 months to make. This was a year of collaborations in general. San Andreas Bigfoot was a collab between Scapocon and her girlfriend, Falin Roban. Throw Some LoL became an entire team of different LoLers assisting with movesets and animation, and many movesets since then tend to credit other people for helping with animation, spriting, and moveset ideas. This was when things were really looking up. Not only that, Shin was back releasing more one-off LoL videos with no creepy twists. Break the Targets videos and long-awaited Tom Byron moveset finally came out. Things could not be any more fun than they were. Wait, why did Villains Valley's thumbnail change? Wait, why is it deleted? Wait, why is Smash Bros Lawl cancelled? What is Jin doing? Before we get to talk about all the good things that happened in 2024, we need to talk about Jin's method of departing from the LoL community. Basically, he retired from LoL silently. He never made an official post about it. Everything was announced through playlists and pinned comments. It just didn't feel right. And then on April 26, 2024, he uploads the fixed version of Villains Valley, which serves as a giant middle finger to all the people with valid criticism towards his work. These moves paint Jin under bad light. All the works he did last year and attempts to work together with community were painted with bad light out of sudden. It felt like Jin only did these things out of spite. And then he deleted all negative comments from the Villains Valley, said something about LoL community being a hive mind circle jerk, and now he makes shitty ass Mortal Kombat parodies all day that somehow get tens of thousands of views. If this had happened during the Transitional era, I am saying this without exaggeration, this would have immensely damaged or even killed the community. But the only thing it did was sever his ties with the LoL community. The whole situation was bullshit, but at the end of the day, it was Jin throwing a childish tantrum and thinking he could paint the whole community in bad light. But LoL still goes on, because it is bigger than him, and it will be around long after he is gone. So in that way, Jin's tweet he made all the way back in classic era rings truer than ever before. Alright, enough of a tangent. Let's get back to the good stuff. First half of 2024 marked the debuts of LoL Legendary, LoL Tuga, LOL Sidestep, and LOL Cassette, a spin-off nobody's ever heard of. We also saw the release of DK's Escape to LOLcatraz, which is just the greatest community collaboration project so far. See you in DK's Movie 3! But 2024 also marked the beginning of a whole new genre of LOL videos, thanks to this guy.
Alright, this is my first real time doing this, but I figured I'd give it a go.
Hebley quickly proved himself to be an influential figure in the community, and without him, I would not be making this video. Before Hebley, videos actually analyzing and talking about LOL movesets were unheard of. But ever since he started his ranking LOL moveset videos, he has invented a whole new genre of LOL videos that have broken boundaries. It also helps that Hebley is willing to talk about LOLs that are not on the ultimate tier list, such as LOL X, which Renaissance era has banished further into irrelevancy. Hebley also inspired me to start Mirai Yaps about LOL alongside Scapocon's LOL Nova commentaries, which actually predate Hebley's videos by a few years. And now Mono Nerd is also doing videos similar to him. He is a national treasure. Second half of 2024 was better than the first half, and I am not even going to recap it because it's pretty much fresh in our memory. We saw the debut of LOL Uprising, and since November we've had a streak of at least one new spin-off debuting every month. LOL of the Lost debuted in November, Hebley's own spin-off LOL Chaos debuted in December, and Josiah the Sith Man's LOL Maximum, very same month. And in January we got LOL Mikan and a Smash Bros Lawl Thing 2. And now we're in the present, and that leads to the next part of our story, the future. Future is often scary, but right now LOL's future looks bright. But that leads to the question of, when will the next era happen? The average length of an era is 2 years and 6 months, and will be due in a couple of months, and possibly during that time, Renaissance era will surpass late Golden era in the amount of movesets. I don't think another Squidward situation will happen where a release of new set will immediately kickstart a new era, but in case you are getting sick of Renaissance era, I do have a proposal for the next era. If the current streak of new UTL quality spin-offs debuting every month continues, I feel like this rebranding makes sense. LOL community is getting bigger, but it's still a community. It's not a massive mismatch of mess like, I don't know, Friday Night Funkin'. And thank God for that. It's still niche at the end of the day. There's also so many things to look forward to that haven't happened yet. We've got the debuts of LOL Hearts and LOL Retro and so much more yet to happen. We've got results of LOL Beatdown and LOL Match and LOL Nova's empty slots yet to happen. Trust me, we'll get to TCLC polls results eventually. We've got DK's Movie 3, just so much. It's also the first era where Jin's LOL is just officially gone. Not in hiatus, not on a break, gone. And LOL as a concept has been inherited by the community. Maybe once we reach couple of months from now, I will let you all know if we are in a new era or if we are still in Renaissance. Of course, it could be that my whole era system is all bullshit. At the end of the day, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I didn't even talk about how Smash games suck out to LOL community. Oops. This went from a simple video that was supposed to explain significance of all the eras into a full-blown retrospective. So it kind of became the very thing it originally wasn't supposed to be. Special thanks to Scapocon for helping me with the fact-checking. It should also be noted that both of us are the only ones whose LOLs have put out movesets in every single era. Well, before we end this for real, I just have an unscripted segment because recently there have been some developments. Because at the moment we are speaking, brand new LOL wiki that is not dependent on fandom bullshit is currently being made. And I just want to raise awareness about it because we are trying our best to include every single LOL in the ultimate tier list. All the possible information, all the movesets, all the lore, all the stages, all the access trophies, even empty slots will get their own pages. And as long as there are people willing to help us and not just add entries of their own LOL. I can't wait until anyone sees my favorite LOL, LOL Baka. The first character will be Lily Baka. Yeah, please don't do that. Anyways, I just wanted to make a quick announcement about this, and link to LOL Mirai Hayes wiki will be in the description. It is also currently using this very era system that I just developed. Well, now that part's over, happy 15th anniversary to Smash Bros Lawl. Here's to 15 more. Oh yeah, before we go, here's a teaser for my next yap.
Now it's